Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jody McNamer, otherwise known as Tyler's dad. And I am the official opening act. So I apologize, I'm the warm-up guy. When Tyler speaks, when my son speaks, it's truly amazing. And one of the big reasons why I don't speak is that I get very emotional. And the reason I get emotional is because I care as a dad, just like you care as a mother or a father or a grandparent or a caregiver, a therapist, a doctor. You care just as much. And it's extraordinary for me to see Tyler from a child that was nonverbal at 6 and started to form sentences around 12, and now he speaks in front of thousands of people every year, and his messaging has literally touched millions of lives. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary for a 23-year-old boy that has autism. He's no longer a boy. He's now a man, right? As a father, he's always going to be my little boy. So I'm interested in knowing how many parents, grandparents, or family members, by a show of hands, are in the audience. Somebody who's a parent, a grandparent, or a family member of someone who has autism. So everybody kind of take a look around. Take a look around, okay? Then I'd like to know how many of you are doctors, therapists, somebody that works in the professional field with someone that has autism. Maybe doctors, therapists, perfect. And then how many teachers, paraeducators, others that are involved in education of any form? How many are there? Perfect, thank you. And how many of you have autism? So, thank you for the courage. For those of you that raised your hand, thank you for your courage. One of the things that my son will talk about is transforming disability into unique ability. So as a father, for the next couple of minutes, I'm just simply going to give you a perspective. Now, I don't have to tell you how challenging having someone in your family or someone that you care for, professionally or from an education perspective, having autism. I don't need to tell you that. I don't need to tell you the stories of eating staples and needles and having meltdowns. I have to tell you those kinds of stories. I have to tell you the stories about not being able to communicate and wanting to communicate. Because you live that every day. And I want to acknowledge you for that. You need to be acknowledged, and you need to be celebrated. And oftentimes, we don't take a minute to celebrate oftentimes the small wins. You know, for many of you in the audience, it may have been very difficult for you to actually get here because the care needs of your children were not taken care of, or you couldn't find a way to take care of them. We're also live streaming this to most likely a very large number of people that were not able to be here. You should celebrate the fact that you have the ability to actually be here. And those of you that have autism, it's extraordinary. You're sitting in a group of people and you're listening to someone who has pitches that are going high and low and the lighting changes. It's amazing that you're here. Celebrate that as a win. You know, that is extraordinary. So I appreciate very much you being here. And one of the things as a parent is just a single strategy that I'm going to share with you, and then I'm going to introduce my son. He's going to talk to you about his experience with autism. But one strategy that I'll share with you is that your confidence as a parent, as an educator, even as a doctor, and somebody in a professional field, your confidence is under attack at all times. If you're a parent, it's those looks you get at the restaurant, or when you're at the shopping, the grocery store, which, by the way, is crazy. I mean, there's cans everywhere and lights and crazy music playing all the time. I mean, it really should be illegal for people with autism, right? Because that's just, it just doesn't work. But when you take a look at your confidence being under attack, it's not intentionally being under attack by educators, but educators may say, you know what? I have seen this 1,000 times, and this is the way we should do that. Well, if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. I mean, you can have 9, 10, 11 children that are affected by autism, and every one of them are different. And what needs to happen to care for them and help them to live the fullest lives that they can is different as well. You as a parent have to go with your gut. You have to educate yourself by going to sessions like this so that you can make informed decisions that are good for you and have confidence and, quite frankly, live with the decisions that you make. So your confidence is under attack, so you have to maintain your confidence at all costs. As a therapist, as a doctor, as an educator, you also, on the other end of that, have parents having conversations or other professionals, or you wonder if the treatment advice that you're giving is accurate. Have confidence. Have confidence that you're going to do that. And one thing that we found as a family to be very effective is that, you do have to celebrate the small wins. And we would track every day the small wins that would happen with Tyler. And when the chips were down, Tyler's much better, by the way. When we could not take another step, because it literally got that desperate as a parent. When we could not take another step, we went back to this little book and we looked at all of the wins that were created for that particular week, that particular day, for the month, because we could celebrate those successes. My son is here really for one reason, and that is because he worked extraordinarily hard. As parents, all we did was create a framework for his success. We gave him access to every opportunity that we could, and where there wasn't a therapy, where there wasn't something, we created it. 500 spreadsheets, literally, with instructions. This is how you take it back. This is how you eat. This is how, right? Because it had to be step by step with pictures. That's how neurotic that was, quite frankly. Right? Access to everything that we could. Everything in the house had a label and a picture as well, right? That's what we did as a family. But all it was a framework. It was simply a framework of success that Tyler had to make a choice. He had to make a choice. And it's extraordinary the work that he did. Literally thousands of hours watched of people, how they move their mouths, conversations, animated characters, things that he was fascinated with. And we're like, what are you doing? This is crazy, with your VHS, running it back over and over again. And we just thought, well, this is just that behavior, right, that they do. They just like the same thing over and over again, repetitive, line things up. It was like, well, but for him, that was completely his way of learning and adapting to his environment. And we didn't know that as parents. He couldn't tell us. Oftentimes, that may be the case with you as a parent or an educator or a doctor. But Tyler will share some of those insights with you of what it's like to have autism. And you have to really understand that your next 45 minutes is all in the listening. It's all in the listening. We're going to have some question and answers after that as well. And hopefully we'll provide some answers that work. We're not professionals. You got to get this. We're a father. I'm a father that was able to just simply watch my son develop, from a nonverbal, again, 6-year-old, 12-year-old finding sentences, and then finally actually being a speaker. It still amazes me. To this day. So, with that being said, again, I'm the very proud father of my son, Tyler, who also happens to be an international best-selling author. Sold, I think, over 28,000 books, I think, worldwide. I'll tell you a little bit about that. And he's an amazing young man. I also want to mention, real quick before I bring him up, just for you being here today, I'd like to extend an invitation. Because remember when we began this conversation, I asked for you to raise your hands. If we stopped the conversation right then and there, this event still would have been extraordinary. You know why? This is your community. I encourage you to stay afterwards. Don't look at this as this was a great speech or a mediocre speech, or just a thing to attend. This is your community that can support you. And while I may not understand exactly what you're going through, I do know what it's like to be a parent of someone with autism. And you know what? Each one of you has a story no more or no less important than mine or Tyler's. So share it. Have the courage to share it. My challenge to you today is to meet the person in front of you and meet the person in back of you. Because most likely you're sitting with the person you know, right? Take that challenge and share your story and have them share your story with you. You'll find it extraordinary. The other thing that we're going to do is, because you are here today, we have a private online community. So Tyler owns a company. It's called Autismworks. Because again, we try to transform disability into unique ability by making autism more workable. So we have a private Facebook group, and if you're members, if we can vouch for this. If you're not members, please be quiet. No, just kidding. No, just kidding. We're going to extend that invitation to you. We're going to approve anyone that says, "Hey, I want to be part of this private group." And the reason why is that is an unbelievably supportive online community, just like is sitting right here in this room. So we're going to do that. You just simply have to go to Population 1. You'll see Tyler's book, right? Population 1, now they do the backslash. Got to do that, right? Population 1 / Indiana. That's all you got to do. So population1.com, population1.com / Indiana. Tyler's admin folks are going to be monitoring this for the next 24 hours or so. So I encourage you to do that. And we're going to approve you for that group. And I think you'll find some extraordinary stuff. Tyler posts some of his webinar highlights there, which is webinars, if you're not on them, they're pretty extraordinary. So I encourage you to do that. And also, we're going to include 3 of his social stories. One on anger, one on sadness, and one on checking in with yourself. And some of the results have been really cool, actually, on this ride. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my son, Tyler. And I very much appreciate you having he and I here, the hospitality that you've shown, and I'd like you to meet an extraordinary individual, Tyler McNamer.
so good to be here in beautiful Tallahassee, Indiana. So with that, I'd like to give out some introductions. So my name is Tyler McNamer. That's right, the name is Tyler McNamer, and I come from Seattle, Washington. And at 17 years old, I decided to publish a book. The book is entitled Population 1, Autism, Diversity, and the Will to Succeed. And that's not one thing about me that I'd like to mention too, is that I'm also a bunch of other things too. Like one of my biggest dreams is to go over to the Motor Speedway and watch the Indianapolis 500 races. I really love cars. I really love racing. That's one thing that should be very good to me too. It's one of my favorite stuff. So without further ado, that's my introduction, and I'd like to get started with another great thing I'd like to mention too. Introductions. Introductions after the introductions. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by introductions after introductions? Well, I think that this part is very important when it comes to introductions. Here's an example. Hi, Tyler. See, that counts as an introduction. But with this basic greeting, this basic two little words of hi, Tyler, I have developed a supernatural superpower that I didn't even think of. Slowing down time. Now, what do I mean by that? Slowing down time. Every time I hear the words, hi, Tyler, time begins to slow down. And in the mind of someone who has autism, we begin to saying paragraphs inside of what goes on. Example is as in panic mode, such as, oh no, someone just told me, yeah, hi, what do I do? What do I do? Do I go in front of them, eye contact? Wait, what am I staring at them? Should I accept my hand? Should I shake my hands? I mean, this girl is quite attractive. I think she's cute, but I don't say no. This is going too far. What do I do? What do I do? And in that moment, I just begin to freeze. And that's one thing that introductions can be such a challenge at times. Just those two little words, hi, Tyler. That becomes a bunch of challenging stuff. So what did I do when it comes to that? Sure you can say hi back, but I had to prepare for that. And that's example was to start to write what I could say, almost as if it was like a screenplay that's going to, like I'm going to a theater play, or be a part of an action-packed movie feature or something like that. That's what I would do. I would actually write down what I could say in response to hi, Tyler. I can easily say hi back, or hello, or good day. Like these kind of different areas. These are different ways of saying of how to apply. And most importantly too is that we also worked on these different social cues. Similar to the stuff that I've been working on with the social stories such as anger and sadness and checking in with yourself. Back then we had a very similar situation. The key part about this is that the characters, very basic, very good, colorful too. And they also, show what you can do on different certain situations. And as Dad mentioned too, he also mentioned that there's hundreds of spreadsheets that work on different areas of different situations, different files that need to be put. And back then, we literally had tons of files. Today, the files on here. That's much more portable. That's that way too. So with that, this basic greeting of hi, Tyler, and knowing what to do afterwards. If I didn't learn how to do these basic skills, wouldn't be standing in front of hundreds of people now, would I? All because of hi, Tyler. Once I master how to interact with that statement, it becomes to grow even further and learn how to communicate and talk to other people as well. That's the one thing about keynote speaking too, is that back then I never really had a good time with eye contact, and when it comes to one-on-one and such, rather with keynote speaking, when there's more people and such, I gotta make sure that everyone gets a chance to be seen, so it doesn't have to be just one person. because I like to just move my eyes, move my head, and stuff like that. So keynote speaking is much more easier that way too. But the breakthrough of that as well is to just generally know what to do and know how to do eye contact when it comes to basic greetings. And sometimes there are times where they tend to break the cycle when it comes to that. Whether it's what are you going to do this weekend? And sometimes even then I wouldn't know what to say. Mainly because I don't know what I'm going to do this weekend. But it's kind of nice to just think of something very fast that I could do. Maybe simply walk in the park, play some video games, watch movies, sleep in. Those kind of weekend activities now, do they? And it becomes much successful way once we know how to write down the stuff and put it into different files. And moving forward from those basic greetings to also asking questions. Asking questions is one of the main key features in order to have conversation. And literally, when I was very little, I would just ask any kind of question at all. But mostly, since my since my words were very limited, my only words that I could ask was why. Just why this is this, or sometimes even expand to what, what does a tree? What is a mate? What is a tree made out? Or what kind of animal is Felix a cat? Even those questions and answers may be so obvious, and obviously Felix is a cat. I still ask those questions because it was a way to generate conversation. And the best part about these is that my parents, they were just there, and they listened, and they answered. Tree is made out of wood. Felix is a cat. Goofy is a dog. These basic answers and stuff too. And ever since then, I've become a big fan of Goofy. I like Goofy. I think he's a fine, good character. Moving forward. And so that's the basic part, is that, when it comes to someone who has autism, don't be afraid to ask questions, even if those questions are so basic and those answers would be so easy and so obvious. Don't ever, make some assumptions like saying, you know what this is, or you should know what this is, or anything like that. No, just politely could just answer, and they like that. Even when they know the answer, they still want to ask those questions, and that generates a key strategy in developmentally social. It means developmentally social. Excuse me. And that's what we would do. Our family, we would ask a lot of questions, and even today, I would still ask questions as well. I'm always so curious about whatever it is that go on. Even when back then I was into movies with the VHS tapes, I still would watch that VHS tapes to see if I'm missing any secret messages that were going on in those tapes. And I would rewind and fast forward and play it again. And I would do this first of all for social situations, but then later on, since I know what to do socially now, I still like to do it just for fun to see if I could find something that I might have missed. But sometimes even when you hear the songs as a child, when you listen to them as an adult, you would learn the lyrics much more clear. So those kind of discoveries are always so neat. Always ask questions. Question everything. That's why I get a tip to you. Even when those questions may seem basic, it's all right to give them a shot. And you might learn something with those basic questions. And developmentally, socially, there's also parts where it's the environment where you're trying to be social. What's a good environment? So that's an example when it comes to autism. The drag races. The drag races. What comes to mind when you think of drag races? Well, I like to answer that by developing all of the senses, such as touch, taste, smell, sight, and hear. The drag races, they break all the senses. You ever been to a drag race? It's a nightmare. Total nightmare, I'm going to tell you. And my dad, he insisted on me going to the drag races. Now, why did he do that? Why did he take me to the drag races, even though I was so sensitive to all those things? It's because he wanted to challenge me, all of those senses, to see what you could be up against. And I can tell you, it was not a good experience. Now, yeah, that experiment was a total failure, a flop. He would even give me earbuds and headphones, and I would still freak out on my mind. Yeah, with the vibration, and I didn't like the foods there and such. I could taste the dust that goes on in this drag race. So I was so dumb because I felt like I just want to cry. And so we went off. We went off to the drag race. But this is the most important part. So I just want to make sure about understanding why he did this experiment. Because believe me, after that, people were kind of attacking my dad, saying, "Why did you do this? You're trying to kill your son. When you do this, why did you take him to the drag races?" It's like one of the last places you want to be when it comes to autism, especially when all those super senses that go on. The reason why, and this is the answer, is because you get to understand other places that can also be considered as quiet compared to drag races. What's an example? The jet ski. The jet ski is fun. The jet ski can be very loud. The jet ski, in a way, has the engine right in front of you. Shouldn't it be a little bit of a challenge? But with the jet ski, we had a situation where we had a choice. If I can remember this correctly, we were supposed to go from point A to point B. One of the only reasons to get there, or one of the only ways to get there, was to go on the sea. See, we live in Washington, right? There's water all over the place, and that was our option. Was to get the boats and the jet skis from point A to point B through the sea. And I was old enough to drive one of those things, and Dad said, "All right, son. This is your chance, and we don't have a lot of drivers here, so we can either try to pack them all up and do it the hard way, do it by land, or we can do it the easy way and do it by sea. Are you ready to take on this challenge?" See, we do the questions again. Now, we always ask those questions. We don't go to conclusions right away, even when they know that I may be sensitive and such. They always ask me, "Do you need your headphones?" and such. And I say, "Yes, please," or maybe not. Always question that. Don't assume that that stuff. And so with the jet skis, it all came down by choice. Do you choose to go on the jet ski? And I made the choice saying, "Yes, I'm ready to do this." And one of the strategies I worked on before I went to jet skis, I would stand to straight, take some deep breaths. Very straightforward, sometimes almost even determined, and then just get ready to go. Think of it this way. Going back to drag races, we like to have this illustration of the fire-breathing dragon, and quite literally too, because of the drag races, you get to see fire coming out of the engine. That counts as the fire-breathing dragon, and once you you admit that you've failed defeat of this flying dragon in drag races. So what happens is that we go back to the castle and fight some new monsters that would be a lot easier to take on. And jet skis was one of the things that we worked on. We took on the monster jet skis, and we rode those things from point A to point B. And at the end of that place, I didn't freak out at all. I was, my eyes were literally bulging out of my sockets. And I was saying, "That was amazing! Then I want to do that again." And then the last thing we did was I went home. I got really sick, and I collapsed on my bed. Why did I do that? Because all the senses because all the senses were coming out and right up like a rising volcano. You get it all out, and you just feel like you just want to collapse on the bed. Because when I was riding the jet skis, that all the senses were canceled out because you weren't paying attention to the noise, you weren't paying attention to how cold the putrid sound was when you're riding, and you only focus on one thing, the destination. That was one thing I worked on. That was one thing I kept in mind, kept focus. All the senses can be canceled out. And I do believe it's possible to learn how to do it. So the drag races was the ultimate breakthrough, because we would know what would be the noisiest place, and also at the same time knowing what places or areas that can be considered a little bit quieter than the main event. And once you take on those events, you will be eventually want to go back to drag races again, and which is why one of my dreams is to go to the Indianapolis 500. That's my key to you. Is that you always do those little tiny steps to work your way from sensory, sometimes even challenging your sensory as well. Whether you have autism or someone who cares for autism, you just have to do those little challenges. But baby steps first, from playing video games at your house to going to an arcade. They got video games in there, so give it a try. Maybe a little noisy, but who knows? Maybe you might like it. And from there to a pinball museum. You actually have a pinball museum in Seattle, and that can be a little noisy, but you can still see the bright lights and the stuff going on in there. And I used to hate pinball back in the day, but now I love pinball because I learned how to challenge myself with those senses and wanting to learn how to get better at those things. Not just on pinball, but learn how to deal with the noises themselves. I mean, you may be studying, of course, you're always going to be sensitive to noise or any kind of sensory. It's learning how to control them that actually makes a difference. Once you learn how to control them, then you're easily drawn to. You can get to take on just about anything that comes to mind. And if something becomes a little too much, it's totally okay. Everyone has their limits. Everyone has their skill sets to take on certain monsters, certain dragons. He's got to learn what to work your way up on those things. So keep practicing and keep working on those things. So with that, I would like to go into the meltdowns. What actually happens to the meltdown? Because I do know that with autism, when the sensory becomes too much, too overwhelmed, then something happens, just snaps, just like that. Show you how to what it's like to have meltdown. For one thing, the consciousness is gone. You don't know what is right. You don't know what is wrong. And when you don't know how conscious of what is going on, sometimes your vision can be a little blurry as well. And the mind becomes overcharged. And by overcharged, you become much stronger, much faster, and the ability to have no self-control whatsoever. That's what meltdown can do. Sometimes those meltdowns can be violent. And so you have to know what are some good strategies on learning how to avoid meltdowns, or even how to prevent that. One key strategy I would like to mention too when it comes to having a meltdown is I was literally squeezed the whole time, and coming from my dad, he's the strongest man I know. Squeeze me as hard as I can, and then eventually, metaphorically, all that stimulus, all that stress, just squeezed it out like a toothpaste. And once I'm squeezed so hard, so hard, I eventually become a lot calmer. I've actually learned, teachers actually learned this too in my school, that with similar tactics like that, when it comes to being squeezed, it can be really quite impressive and learning how to be calm in that certain area. So with that, that's one key example I wanted to do when it comes to a meltdown. Now you don't want to assume when a meltdown has occurred. You always ask them questions about, is this going to be too loud, or is this all right to you, or anything like that. And sometimes sometimes you would know when an event occurred. Sometimes even back then, I would even froze and kind of just would look around with those crazy eyes that I have, and just looking around, just not know what to do. I just feel lost. And my dad and my mom would know. We gotta put in a different situation. And so far, he's not quite ready for this too. But at the same time, yes, they always ask questions. They says, "Is this a little too much for you?" And I would confidently say, "Yeah, I'm afraid so." And it's okay to have those limits. When you say that you can't handle things, that doesn't mean that you're weak or that you don't have the ability to do all that kind of stuff. You just have limitations, and so that just shows you the responsibility. So once you say that I'm not feeling very comfortable with this, or I'm not so sure about this, or it might be a little too much, or anything like that, when you just give up reminders, that's just a great way of being responsible. That's just a great way of being young adults. I do really believe that too. Sometimes even people my age, they have limits, and they need to know what to do on those situations. Sometimes they even when there is something going on too, where like maybe music is too loud or anything like that, I just need to learn how to move myself in the situation by myself, without any help. So it always goes from asking for help to helping yourself, and that can be very possible. I can very much guarantee that's being taught. So, what is a way to actually help when it comes to reluctance? When it comes to learning how to desensitize yourself? One great strategy that I have developed to myself, and just recently, I think it was about 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. I used to have a storage place, a little storage area at my room, right next to my bed, my mom's. And what my mom and I did was we actually take those storage spaces, all these different stuff, and kind of just organize the place. But we also made this a desensitization room. Now, what is in this special place? I call this the cave. Why do I call it the cave? For one thing, this place, personally, and everyone is so different when it comes to desensitization, is that they have the variety of areas. For example, it has a small enclosed space. It's very enclosed. There's not really a lot of room, but it's a small enclosed, and at the same time, you can still feel comfortable as well, whether you put your feet up or anything like that. Number two is it's dark. Darkness surrounds the area. And back then, that's one thing I was really into, is the darkness. I didn't really handle light so much back then, but since there's light everywhere, I'm totally all right with it. So number two, darkness. Number three is pictures. I don't have to go through that, so it's pictures. 4, VHS tapes. They still exist Number 5, I think I'm number 5. Number 5 is books. And it may be a dark place, but I still have a lamp, right next to the very far side, where I can still read. Number 6 is a globe, which has, something to conjure, really. And number 7, an old computer with some old software. I like to keep that; it's very comfortable. And number 8 is the stuffed animals. See, those are the things that I keep in the cave, and every time I always want a little break. Even sometimes when I could do a really big speaking engagement, whether it be traveling from from Washington to Indiana, I would still be so excited to go back to Washington and be in my little personal cave and just take some deep breaths, read, watch some old videos, and that's a good stuff. It's comforting. In a way, it can also be seen as like a little prize at the end as well, next to Snickers Blizzard cake or anything like that. I'm easily impressed when it comes to rewards. So let's go to stuffed animals. Why do stuffed animals so important? Well, I would probably say ever since I was a little baby. They had like paintings of the jungle and all these different animals, tigers, pandas, and bears, lions, crocodiles, all these different animals. And I kind of just grew up with them. And for one thing, stuffed animals, they don't really make much sound. They're very, very soft in color, and it's very comforting. I'm 23 years old, and I still like to be around my stuffed animals. It's okay to have those kind of areas. It doesn't mean that you're weird or anything like that too. Hey, this guy he's stuffed animals. No, it's just a part of it. It's just something that makes you happy. I think that's really good enough too. In fact, one of my secrets to keeping speaking engagements is to imagine the audience as a bunch of stuffed animals. What's that shark doing all the way out of the water? Super cool. That was one of my secrets too. I don't really worry too much about a lot of people. Back then, I was very nervous when it comes to people because I didn't know what to say back to them. A lot of people they just like to talk, and to be honest, I don't mean to sound silly or anything. And I was like, please stop talking. And the reason why is because what am I supposed to say afterwards, right? And so when it comes to stuffed animals, they don't really say much. They just are there. And most importantly, the thing about stuffed animals is that they listen. As crazy as it may sound, is that I do feel like that sometimes, whether it be anything that can be imaginable, they listen. You can talk all you want, and they'll be able to listen to you. So my little good tip to you is that always find and always be close to those who listen. My family is a fantastic example of the listeners, rather than going to specific topics or anything like that. However, of course, there will be saying like, "Hey, we're going to do this." Obviously, that's what families do. They do stuff with each other. But most importantly, they always listen to you, and they always try to acknowledge what you're trying to say, no matter what it could be. Like even when I was very little, I would talk for hours and hours about the Muppets, and my dad. The thing about him is that he would listen for hours, and I actually developed an understanding that he got a little irritated about that, especially when we're talking for about an hour or so. And he said, "Man, you really are into Muppets, aren't you?" And when he said that, I kind of understood. Oh shoot, did I talk too much about Swedish Chef? That's my favorite Muppet. That's my favorite Muppet too. I'm part Swedish, so yeah, I get to actually understand these different social cues that go on. It's actually quite fascinating, and I get to understand these different social cues. And going back to those social situations or those social stories, we always worked tirelessly, day after day, on what is going on. Even when it's like a party that goes on, what happens at the party? It was a Hot Wheels themed party. And we even have little pictures of wheels and hot stuff like that. Back then in our early days of computers, we would say just work on every time everything typed, they always put the little picture like that. Kind of funny story was that we put in Hot Wheels and a hot bowl of soup and wheels, that kind of stuff. And but that was true. We always do those social things with the pictures, and that was mainly, and that was what helped me how to what to do in a party. Party is all about having fun. Sometimes we even learn how to have fun. As well as it may sound, I didn't know how to have fun back then because I was just more focused on what goes on. I may have an active imagination at first, but at the same time, I did not really feel comfortable sharing my active imagination with others. That took quite a while. That took a very long while when it comes to that. So we develop toys. Toys are fun, and toys not only that you can play with them, but but at the same time they are actually a way to develop these social situations and to develop ways on how to play with others. And at the same time, it's really fascinating even today that I did a webinar about toys, and that people get to play with toys in very different ways, in very different situations. They have active imagination on that. And back then, I would actually learn how to be flexible when it comes to playing with toys, because especially when you're with people too, they play toys a little different way, and you learn how to be flexible and learn how to play it along with. And that's the one thing that's really fascinating too when it comes to toys. And yeah, it really is quite astounding achievement when it comes to toys. So back to desensitization area. And yes, I do have foot toys in my cave too, which is kind of fascinating. Even play with my yo-yo as well. Even when I'm just lying down, I just flip it back and forth. Super fun. So back to the desensitization area. We can all use some of the brain too. I just want to mention too that when it comes to those desensitization areas, we can all use it, whether you have autism or not. It's for everyone. So keep in mind that that everyone needs this kind of break. It's a way to be natural in your senses. It's a way to kind of recharge in a bit after a long time. Because think of it this way. That popular superhero Superman, right? What does he have? He has the Fortress of Solitude. Doesn't that count as a desensitization area? Or how about the sun? The sun goes right up to the sun, regains his powers. It's a way to recharge. And so we can picture it like that, because we can all use a Fortress of Solitude and find our own yellow sun. It's always a way to recharge. No checkouts. That's the best part about desensitization areas. There's absolutely no checkouts. So once you find what you're most interested in, whether it be the darkness or the colors, or sometimes even free roam spaces, wide open spaces, even when it's like as simple as the park, where you have wide open spaces and you get to breathe in that fresh air. Everyone is different when it comes to finding their own desensitization. As long as you know what those areas are that makes you desensitized, then that's when you're going to be completely successful. No recharge. That's the best second part out. And once you find those desensitization areas, then I do believe it is worth celebrating. Because as my dad said, that once you find those tiny victory moments, then once you find those tiny victory moments, then it is a way to grow. Even when it's feeding yourself cereal in the morning, or whether you're pouring yourself some cereal, adding the milk, that's worth celebrating, I believe. Even when it's a very simple goal as well. Same with asking the basic questions. They're always worth answering. When it comes to those little tiny victories, definitely worth celebrating. And everyone can celebrate in their own unique way. And and I would like to say, be proud of these achievements. Even when you take your first step, those tiny baby steps of going to maturity, to adulthood. I do believe that those little victories are definitely worth everything. If I didn't learn those victories, if I didn't learn those amazing things that I could do and be able to grow, and be able to become a keynote speaker and sell tens of thousands of books nationwide and worldwide. These little tiny baby steps, they're the key. I do believe that it's a matter of learning how to use those and learn what they can be in the future. So also, I always say that every day can be such a discovery. Just keep in mind that with autism, I just want to mention this very quick. The most important thing about autism is that most of them are listeners. Most of the people who have autism are listeners. All right? Now, keep in mind that in early stages of autism, sometimes you won't be able to know if they are listening or not. Sometimes they can even just stare off into deep space and just not respond. You may see that stuff. But I'm telling you, most people with autism are listeners. They do not really show that they are listening or following directions or anything like that. But they listen to every single word you're saying. Just want to keep it in their mind. And as they grow, they will still listen to whatever you have to say, and they can choose whether to respond or not. And if they want to respond, they really want to do whatever they can in order to be heard. Whether it be through movies or music or even screaming, they want to do whatever it takes to be heard. Literally and metaphorically. They would do whatever it takes. And think of it as alternatives to speaking. They may not have the ability to speak yet, but they will also find ways to communicate, whatever it may be. And it can also be a fun research project as well, once you're able to find about these behaviors. Also, just ask yourself, why is my child doing this? Is it because they want to communicate? Is it because they want to be heard? Why do they do this? And sometimes they don't give off the answer at first, but as they grow up, you begin to understand why these small, the small activities that they do on how they're able to grow into the future. Do whatever it takes to be heard. Every day is a new discovery. Every day is new discovery. Whether it be for those who have autism or for those who are caring for those who have autism. For people who have autism, it can be such an adventure once you find those little discoveries. Maybe you might learn something that maybe you didn't even know as well. Maybe you might be a really great piano player, or maybe even a violin player. You never know what those magnificent talents may be. You might see something that maybe other people might not see, and that's when people get interested. They want to know who you are as a person, not because of whether you have autism or not, but just who you are as a person. It could probably even change the world. There will be challenges. There will be challenges to having autism for those who have it and those who are caring for it. There's always going to be some challenges. So there are always going to be those moments where it's going to be unsuccessful. I know back in the drag races, that was a very unsuccessful experience. And quite frankly, even though it was unsuccessful, we learned how to work around the area until you are ready enough to be facing the dragon at the drag races. Wow. I see. Yeah, I discovered something new about myself. I just made a fun little pun. I think it's so happy. And yeah, it's true. There are going to be challenges, unsuccessful areas. We're not going to ever do this ever again, even at age 25, because who knows? Maybe you might want to go to drag race, or maybe you want to go to the airport, or anything that could even challenge you back then to compare it to now. Keep in mind too that most people with autism, they want to challenge themselves. They want to challenge their senses. They want to challenge something that they thought they could never ever do. When it comes to the senses, those super senses that they have, and either it can be successful or unsuccessful. If it's unsuccessful, great, great. You can. It's always a matter of when you want to do it again. That's the key. So every day is a new